All right, everybody, let's get started. Let's get seated, and you don't have to be afraid to be up close. Come on, we've all been together about a day and a half now, so you don't have to be widespread. I can't see you. Anyways, I'm very happy to be here and moderating the session. I am Sherri Fishman, president of Fishman PR, one of the hosts, and I think my most important title, I'm wife, partner, and mother of Zach and Jake. So that's most important, right? But I'm really excited to be here today. And the session is one that's very near and dear to my heart and what I think about all the time. And the title is Winning Strategies to Elevate Consumer Demand and Increase Revenue in Today's New World. And I have a great panel, which I hardly have to ask questions because this knowledge, you will, trust me, you're going to be taking notes. So this session is really going to focus on highlighting today's revenue-generating tactics to attract customers and build your sales. And we're going to just kind of morph all of the different worlds, the digital world, grassroots, traditional marketing, and PR. And we're going to cover all of them and how it affects consumer demand and revenue. And before we start, I wanted to just have my panel introduce themselves. So why don't you start, Jeff?
Great, and thank you everybody for being here. I know this is right before lunch on the second day, so we're excited to have the turnout. So my name's Jeff Dudan. I'm the CEO of the Dudan Group. I started my career in the disaster restoration industry, so annual revenue, $10 to $20 million a year, disaster contractor. We did environmental services, government contracts, mold remediation, duct cleaning, stuff like that. So started that business in the mid-90s. And then from there, really wanted to pursue a franchising path with it. So we really started franchising by selling off company stores in 2006, 7, and 8 under the franchise model. We went to market in 2009 after the great financial recession. So there was a lot of people out there that had a problem to solve. They needed pay for kids' college. They needed to find some money for retirement. They had 401ks. So it was really a good time for us to go to market. And 9 years later, we ended up with 230 operating businesses in 37 states. And we sold that business called Advanaclean to Home Franchise Concepts. Jonathan, who was just up here at the last one, took it off our hands in 2019. So that was great. And along the way, had gotten involved with other franchises. So currently, we acquired a business 2.5 years ago in the fitness space called Rockbox Fitness with 2 locations. We currently have 118 locations that we've got. And then also, kind of on the services side, I'm a partner in a FSO, a franchise sales organization called Frandevco. So what we do kind of at the Dudan Group is we're building franchise platforms. So we've got a health and wellness platform going that we're building around Rockbox. And we also have a property services platform growing where we're putting together property service brands. So that's what we do. And then, for us, the franchise sales organization fits hand in glove with building brands because, that's what we do. So that is me in a nutshell. I'm happy to be here.
I told you, right? Andrea?
Thank you, Jeff. My name is Andrea Pirrotti. I'm the Chief Marketing and Development Officer for a co-working company called Office Evolution. I started my career off at Time Warner Music Group. I was going to be a pop star, but then decided to work on the business side of the record industry. And then Ernst & Young, where I got my MBA, and I realized that I didn't enjoy pushing a 500-pound gorilla. And so I joined a little-known company called Regis Business Centers, and we grew that company from $200 million to $1 billion in revenue in 5 years. And I ran marketing across 65 countries for 750 units. I left there and wound up working for every co-working provider, every competitor that I could find, and then found myself at Office Evolution. Why Office Evolution? We're growing. I like to grow things. 4 of the companies that I've worked for, in addition to Regis, have had exits. really successful exits. And Office Evolution is in growth mode. I run development, so in charge of expanding the network via traditional franchise as well as development with landlords. I also run real estate and construction, which is kind of odd, but it's our product, right? So I'm a control freak, and as a marketer, I want to own the product. So I own real estate and construction. Then I also run brand. So I'm in charge of building brand awareness, driving demand, and also sales. I just built an inside sales team. So all the way down, full life cycle management, right down to revenue and ROI. So I'm thrilled to be here today. It's my first springboard, and I'm excited for this session. Heather.
Now Heather.
Awesome. Hi, guys. My name is Heather McLeod. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Authority Brands. We have 10 brands, all in the home service space. And I have been in franchising. It's kind of crazy to think back about it now, but for about 12 years, I started at Neighborly when it was the Dwyer Group, so started there and then came to Authority Brands. And I think one of the things that really kind of pulled me there, and I think is an interesting topic that we can dive into once we get started a little bit, but our approach to marketing and local marketing specifically is a little different. Rob spoke yesterday, and I know you guys heard some of his comments about think about fee structures, think about different things that you can do to diversify where revenue comes from as a franchisor. And one of the things that we do a little differently is we actually execute local marketing for our owners. So we're actually doing it for them, collecting the fee and executing, which makes it a little easier to control on the revenue and the growth side. So I'm sure we'll get into some of that. I'm excited to be here with you guys, and I'm excited to be a part of the panel.
Well, great. I told you, right? A wealth of knowledge here. So we are going to drink that fountain of knowledge now by starting some questions with you. And I think that it's really important to kind of start off with talking about what changed to drive consumer to your prospective brands, the pre-pandemic to where we are now, this new world that we're living in when it comes to driving your customers to your respective brands. So what has changed? So I'd like to start with Andrea to start out with that.
Yeah, that would be my pleasure. You know, if we look back over the last 20 years, this is reminiscent of some things that we've experienced, right? 9/11, the turbulent times of mid-2000s, the Great Recession, and then boom times. And if we think about what's happening right now and some of the key drivers of our consumers is they're driven by fear. They're driven by fear of safety, personal human safety. They're driven by fear of, will I be able to put food on my table? Will I have a job? Will I be able to travel? Will I be able to leave the house? And so in our world, or the world of co-working, it's like, I had to get people out of their house and into an office, right? And when you think about it, it's really a business decision because we're dealing with small business owners. But it's really a human decision because that small business owner has to go to their significant other, to their spouse, or to their children and say, I'm making this decision not to work out of my home anymore. I'm going to go and work in a co-working space, but I'm going to be safe and it's going to be okay. And so the first thing that we had to do was turn our marketing efforts from a B2B sale to a human-to-human sale. And so we started with our members first. You know, in politics, they always say, solidify the base, right? You got to go to the base first and then expand within the base. And so we first reached out to our members, and believe it or not, when the pandemic hit in May, we sent them t-shirts. And it said, dreamers, risk takers, and doers inspired here. And we said to them, you know what? We're not with you right now, but we want to know that no matter where you are, we're going to wrap our arms around you virtually. And we retained our members. And then we expanded that to, and we're a retail environment, and instead of having signs that said, warning, wear a mask, take your temperature, blah, 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 be fearful to walk in here. We had a big sign that said, welcome, and please, we would encourage you to wear a mask, and we ran them through the protocol. And then in our cafe, we said enjoy, and gave them the ways how to enjoy, and the same things in the meeting rooms. And I use this playbook and I bring back the early 2000s because this playbook was written, right, when people have been uncertain. So I realized I needed to guide certainty. I needed to let people know that business is still getting done and that they would be safe here and that we were thinking ahead and we were going to guide them through the process of getting back to work. And it started off with retention because I knew that I wasn't going to get any new people into my office. They weren't going to inquire, they weren't going to tour, and they certainly weren't going to buy. So I started with retention. I started with creating a sense of calm amongst my franchise owners and my BCMs to let them know it's going to be okay, we're going to guide the way. And then I started to see that message of comfort, via social media, via our outbound reach, via our paid digital and our remarketing ads to say, we've got you, it's going to be okay here. And I can tell you, we retained, for the last 6 months, we've had our highest lead gen in our company history, as well as on a unit-by-unit basis, as well as the highest number of sales in our company history. And it truly is just by making a human connection. I like to say we don't have a lot of money, but you can capture hearts and minds one at a time to drive demand and to drive revenue.
Thank you, Andrea. That was great. And we all know that it's all about building that emotional connection to your members or your franchisees or your customers. So important because that is, it's all about as a leader, as David Barr said so many times, that it is your job to be that cheerleader, to put them in the right frame of mind, to guide them, to be positive. I know that was something where in our organization, I think that is what the caring and really kind and supportive leader that we were for our clients, for our staff. That's what kept us together and kept us looking forward, positive for the future, that we can do this. And it's all in the way and how you present yourself to as far as your brand and how you represent yourself. I think it's important. Let's go back to Heather before we go back to Jeff, to talk about what you mentioned during your intro, because I think that's truly important because that's a different way in which you're viewing the customer demand and how you're driving revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. It is different, and you can grab, if you guys want, you can grab any of our FDDs on Mosquito Squad or the Cleaning Authority, and you can see how this is structured from a fee structure and perspective. But one of the things that can be tricky sometimes in the way that we often think about marketing as a franchisor is most of the time your marketing staff ends up being a coach telling your franchisees what to do. You should work with this vendor, you should do this, here's who you should contact, versus having a marketing team that actually executes. So the way that we've structured 4 of our 10 brands, and we're kind of working through some of the others that we've acquired to put similar things in place, is that we have a local marketing fee. So it's in their agreement. It's part of what helps us sell franchises is that they don't have to do marketing. They don't have to worry about it. We do it for them. So we have a fee built into all of our agreements, along with our national ad fund fee as well. It's a secondary fee that we draft, and we execute their local marketing for them. So they don't have to worry about it. It puts more responsibility on us as a team to deliver and execute, but it does help us with kind of the common problem of franchisees maybe not always wanting to spend in marketing or not thinking about it as an investment in their business, but thinking about it as an expense. Mm-hmm. And so when things happen like COVID, we were able in all of our brands, we made some, March was a scary month if we all think back, like what's going to happen. So we did some things with our marketing fee structures for a couple weeks to kind of make everybody calm and let them know that we were in it together. But then after that, we kept kind of powering through. And the thing that was great about that is, so there's a lot of things that I really like about this, from having a team that gets to actually do marketing versus just telling, and kind of guiding and giving advice. But with COVID, we were actually able to change some of our perceptions about what our standard demand kind of cycles look like. Some of our businesses are seasonal. So we have always said, swimming pool season starts at, end of April. Well, with COVID, we realized we could actually create more demand for pool heaters, and we could get people to open up their pools sooner and use them and think of their backyard as an extension of their home. And we'd never really challenged that kind of thought about what the demand curve looks like. So because we can control the spend, and obviously our franchisees get, they make selections, they're involved in the process, but it's a pretty structured program across the board. We can do things like that, and we've had incredible levels of demand and consumer demand through COVID and ongoing, because people really did kind of look at their homes as, now's the time I can do these things. I'm working from home now, so I can have this service done that maybe I didn't want to schedule before because of work and travel and all of that. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the approach that we have. And like I said, I'm happy if anybody has more specific questions. I don't want to get too in the weeds, but happy to answer those. And then our FTDs kind of outline what it really looks like from a fee perspective.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. And we all know that is one of the pain points of working with franchisees, that you still have franchisees that are kind of balking the system, and when it's paid for already and it's a marketing fee and it's done for them, then we have that consistency, and that's everything in franchising, right? Consistency. And it reduces the complaints. So Jeff, tell me, kind of give us an idea. So you have both sides, development and consumer, more development than marketing, but at the same time, your perspective, listening to what Andrea and Heather shared. What is your take on this question, going back to just the overall what's changed with?
Well, I think what would be, I think at least would be beneficial would be to talk a little bit, add a little bit more color on what Heather was talking about on what you do in customer acquisition. And the question, if you're an emerging brand, that I would ask myself is, I would say, all right, how much are you willing to engage in the customer acquisition process? Okay, and here's what I mean by that. And I've worked with a lot of brands. I get to look at a lot of brands and evaluate brands for development. So I'm really in a unique position where I get to work with people that have 2 locations, or look at people that have 100 locations. So David McKinnon was the founder of Molly Maid, and he's a great mentor to so many people in the industry, and just a great franchisor. And he shared with me one time, he said that there's 3 things you need to really measure. Number one, or you need to pay attention to. Number one, which is what we're talking about here, is what's the affiliation benefit that a franchisee gets from being part of your brand? And what that means is, how much work, how many customers do I get because I'm flying your flag? So, and he would say in a service business that they should be able to attribute 30 to 40% of their revenue that comes through the website or things that you do as a franchisor, because if their business would drop off 30 or 40%, then they can justify paying the royalty because of the customers that are coming in as a result of that. The other 2 things that don't relate were, keep finding ways for your franchisees to make more money, and stay close to development and keep a steady stream of great franchisees coming in. So that. But kind of back to the affiliation benefits. So when you're starting out, it's expensive. At AdvantaClean, we did all the marketing. We were very similar to what you guys did. And yes, I've been reading your FDDs. Bedtime reading for 10 years as authority.
I'll put you straight to sleep.
Yeah, the cleaning authority really. If you want, somebody asked me 2 weeks ago what was the best FDD, and I said I would read the Cleaning Authority. It was a great, well put together brand by that owners. But we drove all the leads. We had an in-house marketing team. We outsourced PR, and then we had a call center. So we participated heavily in the customer acquisition process. We took 250,000 inbound phone calls a year, and we scheduled every appointment across the network in all 230 plus locations. But we had a $10 to $20 million business to fund our franchise habit. So how does an emerging brand do it? Well, we're closing on a deal this week where they run the play and they say, well, here's 3 vendors to choose from, but we want you to use this one. And the franchisees pay $575 a month. And they're booked out for 6 weeks. So if we acquire this brand and I go in and say, well, this is the way we do marketing in this brand, and we want to do call center, we jack the cost of that brand up when they can't take any more business anyway, and maybe we need to expand their capacity or whatever it is. So the question is what's right for you? What is right for you and your brand where you're at? And just because you decide to outsource today doesn't mean you don't want to work towards a different type later, meaning that you take a bigger role in the customer acquisition process. Now, I will tell you that when your systems get larger, you want to have more control over the customer. Mm-hmm. You want the customer record. So the trade-off is it's probably cheaper to outsource, but you lose the data. Now, you might be able to find a way to do the data. So strategy always determines structure. So you have to figure out what is your strategy in participating in customer acquisition, because you can do incredible things with digital stack software where you're curating content that comes in from the franchise networks, and then you're putting it in one software and it goes to Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. Super high value for the franchisees. Get them out from behind their computer, get them out in the community, building their business like they need to. So if it's your strategy to participate more in the marketing, then you've got to understand that there's going to be costs of human costs and technology costs and software costs and all those types of things that are going to go with that. But you get a big uptick in the data that you get, and using that data, you can inform your franchisees what's working, what's not working, and provide better support and better service. So, I'm big about centralizing anything that can be centralized, should be centralized, and anything that can only happen in the location needs to be done at the location. In-person sales, closing deals, doing estimates. But I think everybody should be, used to be to get dashboards out, you'd have to spend $50,000 and have technicians come in to tie. Now you can get let's dash this and just tie, have your kid tie stuff together, and you're producing dashboards and reports that are great. So, but I think that's the top of the house question is what's your role going to be in it, and how are you going to be intentional about moving towards a place in your brand that's appropriate for you. And that was not an answer to your question at all. So what was the question again?
It worked. It worked, right? I think it worked. The whole idea of this session, we're at Springboard, so you don't have to be, formal about this. We want you to learn. We want you to come out invigorated and inspired, and have notes and sound bites that are memorable. So, that was a lot, and that was great. And yes, it was. We were really talking about overall what did answer the question, Jeff. So that's good. Yeah. So we have a long history. He has spoken for me many different events, and he can pretty much talk about anything. So yeah. So thank you for that. I think it's important kind of to talk more in the nitty-gritty and talk about ways. Because people are here to find out ways in which, specific tactics. So if you could name a couple of ways in which your franchise brands have increased the demand and revenue. So specifically, Andrea?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start at the very top for diagnosing the problem. We
Sure.
run everything by the numbers, right? And we've talked about predictable revenue, because ultimately you want to get to a point of predictable revenue, and it is possible, and it's driven by data, as Jeff said. So I have a dashboard that I can use to cover any of my 75 locations, and I can diagnose exactly what the problem is. And it's very simple. It's what's your break even, because in this time, sometimes you got to work towards break even, right? What's my target? What's my actual? What are my number of leads? What's my number of sales, conversion from lead to sale? And then in my world, it's what's my occupancy? And I can, through those 5 numbers, look at any single location and diagnose the problem, because sometimes it's not leads, right? So let's say it is leads. Well, there are only a handful of ways that we're going to drive leads. And I'm going to tell you right now, you got to get down to the basics. When I've run marketing across 750 locations, the major issue, and you've got thousands, the major issue is that the franchisees or the individual operators do not want to do the basics because they're not sexy. Who the heck wants to do the basics? But for I know that 90% of my leads come from, 88% of my leads come from digital. You got to make sure your GMB presence, please, have your right photos, make up questions on the FAQ, make sure that you have that you have your products listed with compelling pricing. Make sure you have reviews and have programs in place to make sure that your franchise owners or you, if you're running it from corporate, are having that GMB presence. Make sure you have a presence on paid digital. Make sure you have a compelling offer with a compelling lead price. Make sure you're working with your channel partners. We work our channel partners so hard. They want to know, our channel partners drive meeting room revenue for us, virtual office revenue, office revenue. Think of your channel partners in your world. Get to know them. Let them know that you're going to service their referral. You're going to service their member. Because people do business with people they know and that they like. Let's just say, and then go from there. So and signage. For me, it's signage. So I'm going to focus on the 4 things that it's going to take to drive revenue, but drive leads. But sometimes it's not just about driving leads. I've looked at some of my 75 locations that are open, and sometimes they have all the leads in the world, and their conversion stinks. Okay? But there are only 4 ways to increase conversion. Number 1. Product. Do you have the right product? And have you expressed your value equation appropriately, where value equals perceived benefits divided by perceived costs? Are you conveying your product value proposition correctly? Number 2, do you have the right price? In Office Evolution, we are not the low-cost provider, but I will tell you that during the pandemic, all day long, I have expiring inventory. I will compete on price. I'll reduce the benefits that I deliver with the product so as not to diminish my value proposition, but I will compete on price all day long. Do you have a compelling promotion? Are you using promotion in the right way during your sales cycle to drive that sale? And then finally, do you have the right salesperson? Period. Are they following the basics from a sales standpoint? Are they following up with the lead? In the last session, it said 4 hours to follow up with a dev lead. In my world in co-working, if you're not following up within 15 minutes, if you haven't contacted that person who wants to buy an office or a meeting room or a mailing address in 15 minutes, you're done. So you have to think about how that translates into your world. But following up with that lead and following up and having the sales script, having the life cycle management communication, and never letting them go. Never letting them go until they say no. So we drive predictable revenue by following the numbers. We only do the basics. We know exactly where our leads are coming from. We know the exact messaging that we need to use to drive those leads, the exact compelling offer we need to use to get that person to press submit. And then we make sure we've got a compelling product, price, promotion, and then we make sure that our salesperson, we have inside sales nurturing and supporting that lead, but we make sure that our salesperson is following through and nurturing that lead to close.
Great. So maybe I'll just share a little bit about some of the actual tactics that we use and then some of the levers that you can pull to drive revenue outside of just getting more leads in the system, right? Because right now, I think something that a lot of people are experiencing in regards to labor is that you might end up in a position where you can't grow by adding more customers because of local employees and the ability of your franchisees to staff appropriately. So one thing I would say to keep in mind is don't be afraid to coach your franchisees or to have a program in place to help them raise their prices, because you can always execute price increases, especially in our recurring business models, where you can execute a price increase. There's going to be a percentage of people who maybe they terminate because of that, but that's okay because you can replace them. Because demand is high, you can replace them with someone who will pay more. And we, of course, we don't want people to leave, but that is a lever that you can pull. So in some of our brands over the last 2 to 3 years, we've been able to increase pricing by 35% or so, which is significant. So if you can't add more staff to handle more volume, then that's something that you can do to drive revenue. And then from a kind of a more technical marketing perspective on what we do to generate leads on our side, we're pretty split between direct mail and more traditional formats and digital. Digital is always kind of the conversion factor, right? Because people don't just like pick up a direct mail piece and call the phone number anymore. They go online, they do research. So reviews and reputation is a huge part of what we're focused on. In home services specifically, Google local service ads are amazing. I wish that those had been around for longer, to tell you the truth. They're expanding into more spaces, so if you're a service business and you're not familiar, I would definitely take a look at those. They're great, and they convert really well, very high-quality leads for our franchisees. Let's see, what else? PR, of course, so kind of the normal mix of things across the board, but we try to be flexible and not be afraid to try new things. Especially, home services is not always like, a couple of people have said that it's not a sexy space, like it's not as exciting as, QSR, restaurants, gyms, things like that. So we try to be forward thinking about what we do from a marketing perspective too. So not being afraid to try new things when new channels open up to see how they perform. And if they work, great. If they don't work, cool, move along, try something else. So.
Hey, what's not sexy about 300 contractors at convention? That's sexy.
I will say...
The bar bill is sexy.
Yeah, the bar bill, yes. And, the watches, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I'd say, too, thank you for sharing. When it comes to what we can do to help drive consumer demand and build those sales, what you had touched upon it, obviously digital is so huge. Can you focus more, Jeff, about the technology side and the challenges that you have seen just recently? You would talk to us about how it's changed just recently.
So in terms of technology and...
Yeah, technology and working through technology. You had mentioned just what your team had done in the marketing, in marketing the brand.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. If you walk through the IFA convention, and I'm sure you're all going to go and be there next year, there's, I don't know how many vendors, 1,200 vendors, and everybody's got a piece of software. So, and then what happens in your company is maybe the development person is responsible to source the development software and the marketing. So now it happens, and it still is a challenge for us that you get disparate systems that don't talk to one another. And so again, trying to get the right talent around your technology roadmap and making sure that keep it simple, keep the data clean. Don't try to, if a team member who might be in marketing or might be in operations or might be somebody in the business office, and they're going to come to you and say, we need this software. We had Rockbox for 2.5 years, and we've already gone through our first cleansing of softwares that we were no longer using because everybody grabs something and it's only $29 a month or whatever it is. So from that perspective, it's a big challenge, and because everybody has their needs, and we run kind of a 6-pillar model. So we believe that there's 6 pillars to franchising excellence, and you've got to be good or excellent in each one of those pillars. And then you've got to have a compelling competitive advantage that you can articulate underneath that will resonate with franchise prospects and with consumers. So you've got to have a competitive advantage, whatever it is. It doesn't need to be rocket science, but it needs to be real. It needs to be something that provides a material benefit to your end users and to your franchisees. So, from that perspective, we've got a leader in each of these pillars of the business. Just if anybody's interested, it's marketing, franchise development, operations, technology, business office, which is governance, compliance, not just the accounting, budgeting, forecasting, then something that we call customer voice. We believe it's very important that you need to find ways using technology for the voice of the end customer to fall directly on your ears as a franchisor. Without getting in the way, you've got to find where to fish to get your net promoter score. Because here's what happens, right? You talked about reputation management and all these things are so important. Well, the feedback that you get from franchisees is often going to come through their lens. It's going to come from their perspective, and they may or may not have come to the terms with the fact that they are indeed the problem, right? So you're getting the feedback from them. But if you can manage, that's why it's important to centralize. Some of these reputation management softwares are great. There's a variety of them out there. And so that you can, and that's why call center, chat, things like that are important, because then you can get a real look at the volume of chatter and leads that are coming through your system. You can also see the reputation, any reviews that are coming through your system. With the call center, it was great because we were able to head off complaint calls. If the franchisee wasn't calling them back, that never happened because the call always went to our call center, so we were able to de-escalate things. Mm-hmm. I think we had a 4.92 or 4.94 out of 5, and I attribute that to the ability to de-escalate things. So, letting the voice of the customer fall directly on your ears is something that you need to figure out so that you can have you get another data point as to how performance is and how the consumers are being serviced out there. Whatever your brand promise is, you want to make sure that it's being met. Thank you.
I think we all know, and going back and being empathetic to the emerging brands that are here, that there's just so much to learn and what decisions to make. And that's why you're here, to have this opportunity to talk to not just the franchisors who are seasoned franchisors who've been here, or the emerging brands who started here 7 years ago and now are speakers, but it's, take that time, as I hope you have, to not work into your room, but work every moment you can to ask the questions, to ask specifically all these people that are here, all these people up here, will tell you who they work with and why, and what experiences they've had, because it's not just part of driving and building your customer base and your revenue is finding the right partners to work with, and each partner has a different differentiating factor. So I'd like to talk to Andrea about that, because Andrea, as you can tell, pretty competitive and she's data driven, which we all should be, and very careful and closely scrutinizes. It took a long time. She is a client of ours. But it took a long time for them to decide, but I think that's good, there's a good reason, and it's really important to always put, and I'm telling you as a supplier, but as someone who is supportive, and I've been in franchising since '84, okay, at age 12, but I just say that it's so important for you to trust your vendors. They're your partners. And I mean it fully. So why don't you share how you go through the process and what have been your go-tos with the tactics?
Well, it is an incredible question, and it's very timely for me as well. We work with Franchise Elevator because they're our partners. We know that we'll go through ebbs and flows, and we were just on Channel 7 News, showing off our offices because people are making offices more like their homes, now. And it was a great story. It meant the world to our franchisee, who was also on the FAC, as well as the Marketing Advisory Committee. So that was a big deal, but there are ebbs and flows, and it's a partnership, and it's growing together. I can tell you that I am now doing a digital RFP. I have a digital agency that we work with, who 3/4 of our franchisees work with, that we work with at corporate. We have never generated more leads on a per unit basis at a lower cost that convert higher with the greatest ROI. My franchisees don't trust them for a number of reasons. And we found out also that they were taking a cut of media, which is fine. right? If you're a digital agency, that's fine. Sometimes you take an agency fee or a monthly fee, right? And then sometimes you also take a cut of media, and that's fine if it's divulged up front. This was not. And so even though these guys are producing like gangbusters, they have completely lost the trust of corporate and of our franchisees. And I was compelled to do an RFP and to replace them. And when we did that RFP, we went out, and the first thing that we did was we went out and asked for recommendations from our trusted sources, from our franchisees, from our trusted partners, and people that we had known throughout our careers. We had 22, okay? And the first thing that we did was we had a meeting and we said, of all of them, they all came together and we said, here's who we are. Here's what we want, and here are our core values. And they sat through a minute sizzle video that we have that talks about our core values. And I kind of looked at them because they were all on video, and I looked who was engaging, who was rolling their eyes. They're talking to us about their core values, and they're making us watch this silly video. I don't think it's silly, but anyway. And you can kind of get a vibe about who's really engaging with your brand and who's really interested in the long term. And it went through a cut, and it went through a 3-month-long process cut. But it went through that because I wanted to see how we engage with them. I wanted to see how much effort they were willing to put into the process. And this was a big deal. And we not only had our corporate team in it, but we had our entire marketing advisory committee vetting these potential new partners. We've whittled it down to 3. It did take us 3 months, and we feel that we have the best and the best. But this is just not about bringing on somebody who's going to produce for you. It's about bringing on a partner, somebody who's going to go through the ebbs and flows, somebody you can trust, somebody who's transparent, buys into your core values, and that you can grow and develop with together.
Right. And it's so important to listen to her and to try your very best when you listen to those around you who've been through it, been there, done that, to reduce the amount of mistakes you're going to make. I know that every single day I make mistakes, but when you think about your business, if you could just learn from someone else, and it saves so much time, money, energy, frustration, your whole idea is to move, forward, not to move backwards, not to cause frustration. And when it comes to franchisee satisfaction, that's validation. So you have to keep them happy as possible. And so looping in your FAC, your marketing committee on the decision for the digital side or whatever other vendor you want, and you want to get them involved, is a good thing. Right? So it is now, 12:15. So I want to wrap the panel part up because we have roundtables. So all of us will be roundtable leaders, and I believe there's other roundtable leaders as well. So there's table tents for those people. Please, I think that we've talked for a while now, so maybe I'd like for you guys to stick to our format and have an opportunity to talk with each other. Before we do that, were there any questions that you have for the panel? Because if you have a burning question, I'd like to answer that, and we can just adjust the roundtable timing. Is there anybody who has a question? No? Okay. I know it's right before lunch, so why don't we gather together, go and go up front we can, or collect ourselves in tables together. Some of us are scattered all over the place. We'll kind of mesh over there and then wrap it up.